Welcome on our video lesson, and today we have a topic of the types of parental care, and to be exact, we continue today to study parental behavior of birds, and today we have the plain nest building, incubation, and if you know, mimicry from previous our practical, and we have the hatching, synchronic, asynchronic, and of course provisioning after hatching, and models of parental care. And these animals differ in the place of development of embryos, and accordingly their nutrition, and the birds are born in hard shelled eggs, and most birds parents build nests in a 3-burrow or 3-hole and incubate the eggs with their own body heat to keep them warm and safe until they hatch. And hatching birds are small and helpless, and their parents bring them food and continue to keep them warm and dry. And birds will also teach their young how to get food and avoid danger. And of course they will stay with them until they can fly or swim or just run away on their own. And here we see the place of development and source of nutrition for the embryo. In general, today we should do two parts of our practical for birds and for mammals, but when I start to prepare this practical, I understand that it's impossible to connect all these big terms, so today we just talk about oviparity egg-laying animals. And so here I just compare two kinds of animals, mammals and birds, and of course for today we talked about only about birds nest and incubate eggs to keep them warm and protect until they hatch, and keep new hatching worms fit and safe, and stay with young until they can fly, swim or run from predator and find food their own. Here with this spies have one thing in common: the offspring will not survive without care. Absolutely. We talked about insects and fishes, and you know, some of them can be absolutely without care of parents, but today we talk about animals which can to survive without care. And finding a place to breed, it is first that we talked about today. And through the year most birds use daylight to tell what season it is, and then the number of hours of daylight hits a certain critical level, and physiological changes are triggered in birds which prepare them to breed. And most birds, especially those in temperature regions, temperate regions, also time their breeding activities so that they will be feeding their nest lights and when food is most abundant. However, before nest layings arrive, birds need to select breeding territory, and non-migratory species may either maintain a territory throughout the winter or establish a new one in the spring, and migratory birds begin looking for the different territory as soon as they arrive in the spring. And good territories provide potential nest sites, reliable for food sources, and protection from predators. Of course, choosing the mate is the next step. And while territories are being climbed, birds try to attract mates. In most species, females choose males based on an assessment of their overall quality and vigor, and males adverse their suitability as made by exhibiting bites, breeding plumage during courtship displays, but breeding food to females by demonstrating their nest building abilities and by singing and or calling just social pair bonds tie males and females of most species together for the breeding season, but promiscuity is not uncommon. DNA analysis has shown that even birds that it's made for all life, such as bluebirds, may not always be faithful. And it is possible for nestlings in a single nest to be fathered by different males, and males of some species such as the red-winged and house wren can have more than one mate at the time, and mating system called polygyny, and in our previous practical we talked about this all mate categories. And nest building, it's very important for parental care, and nests provide a safe place for eggs and young birds to develop, and birds' nests are extremely diverse. Also, each species typically has a characteristic nest style. Some birds do not make nests at all and instead lay their eggs in the simple square in the ground, and we will talk about it soon. Other birds construct nests from natural materials such as grass, leaves, or wood and fur, for example, or from human-made materials like paper and even plastic. And nests can be found almost everywhere in the ground, in trees, in burrows, on the sides of cliffs, and in human-made structures like in the buildings. And females typically build nests, but sometimes both parents or just the male build the nest. And here we see these different kinds of nest, and the first one, it is a nest like a cup-shaped nest. These cup-shaped nests are used by different bird species, and here we see this a lot of, and they consist of a strong outer shell constructed from grass or just fine vines, and these nests are then lined with soft material like downy feathers or soft fluffy seeds, and even a spider's web is often used to bind the nest together, and often material like pieces of lichen and moss added to outside to camouflage the nest that is often placed in the fork of the trees. Just here you see this fork, and create cup-shaped mud, these rock martins nests that are built against a wall or a cliff overhead, and some pipits and chats create nap cup-shaped nest deep in the grass where they are invisible to any predator walking past. Of course, it has, you see this, even a spider web for camouflage and for keep all together, and birds camouflage their nest by adding bits of lynched dry leaves and other materials. And here this bird, it's a cup-shaped mud nest. Here we see this under the roof against a wall and close to the ceiling, and of course it's very interesting model. And here we see the scraped nest. It's very interesting that some kinds of birds just scraped some ground. Here we see the scraped nest are literally shallow depression in the sand or gravel or soil, and they are created by the bird simply scratching the soil or sand away from the central point in a circle. And some of these scraped nests are lined with bits of soft material, but many are not lined at all, and the bird just lays the eggs on the ground. And these nests are created mainly by ground birds, and sometimes the birds will camouflage it, and eggs of these birds are normally well camouflaged because their color and because their nest lights are at great danger in these nests on the ground. And power chicks are born with their eyes open, and they very quickly, almost immediately, walk after parents, and immediately after hatching, and it helps to survive, of course. And here we see this all ground nest birds need to ensure that the eggs are camouflaged and blend in the surrounding, and so this always so spots, a lot of spots, and the color, like in the color of the ground, and to here we see this two camouflaged eggs of chickney laid of the ground. One more, burrow. These burrows are found in sandbanks, on the riverbanks, or in the sides of termite mounds, where these insects live, and sometimes in the roof of the large holes. Here we see this holes. This animal is this Edward hole, and here is this nest. Or in erosion gills and old mine shafts, anti-eating sheds are known to build their long burrows in the roofs of the large Edwards burrows. These burrows can be over a meter long, and then in the large chamber where the eggs are laid. The nesting chamber is often lined with soft material. Usually these burrows are constructed at a slight gradient upwards, so they can't be floated. Then it rains, and here we see this one more kind of nests mound. Flamingos build mounds or torus shapes out of mold or clay in islands, in shallow pans, and the other water birds like coots construct an mound that floats in the water or is attached to reeds or submigrate branches in the water. And here we see this kind of nest. Next, it's a cavity. It's cavity, very, very popular in birds. These nests are usually found in natural tree cavities, or they are just excavated by barbs or woodpeckers themselves. And sometimes the cavities can be in walls or roofs or holes in buildings. The excavated tree cavities have their root holes in three trunks facing away from the preventing weather with the rain. The cavities, and in a large chamber there the eggs are laid and the chicks raised. And nesting cavities are sought after many types of birds that do not excavate their own nests. So this is often competition for these nesting cavities, and the original owners can be just after all their hard work. And there are many birds that will use the excavated cavity. Here we see these woodpeckers can do only with it is a very hard work. This is kind, but we can use any cavities in a building. For example, here we see this, but of course it is better to do it yourself. Platform nests. Platform nests are very simple in design and consist mainly from the wood pieces of wood in the fork of the tree on the ledge of the cliff to form a platform on which to lay the eggs. These nests are made by many large raptor hares and some storks. If the nest is used successfully years, it can become quite large and sturdy. To build new generation of this nest, but here we see that some animals, some birds do very simple, like doves and pigeons also construct this kind of nest, platform nest. That's very funny. But sometimes there is not attempt to hide the nest from the predators, and it is often to see through that. You can see this just have an egg on the platform without any borders, and here this exactly, it's very funny. But you see this nest can be different form, and even here we see these animals and build more levels of this nest. It can be. And next kind pendant nest. This style nests are usually woven out of green blades of glass or thin strips of palm levels. They usually hang from the end of the thin in a tree, and snakes find it difficult to accept these types of nest, and here we see these kinds of nest. And if you want to know more about nest, I will leave the links to the bird's nest. I take this information from this site, and here we see this. And about this big cities of the nest, we will talk about it soon. But one more sphere or ball-shaped nest are usually built in grass or in trees, and are well camouflaged with these pieces of the most bound with thin threads, and even in wood. And some birds' nests, some are oval balls with an entrance on the side near the top. Here is the top of the nest. They are usually attached to branches, have these two branches and the ball nest, but sometimes it can be from woolly, absolutely. Here we see the street nest, intricate nest built out of seeds or sheep's wool in sheep growing areas, of course, and the material is finally made like fit to become waterproof. And these nests have a false entrance. It's very interesting. That leads to a shadow pouch to fool predators, and the real entrance is very narrow, and it's just above the false entrance. And the birds open the close this entrance with the feet, then they arrive or leave the nest, and this fits roots. It's this nest even out of breeding season. It's very interesting building nest. So effects of grouping on predator risk, we will talk about this. And very often birds build nests very close together. We have already discussed this issue. This is a way to hide from predators. And today we talked about this animal. We have finished looking at bird nests, but we know that not all birds have a nest. And let's now talk about such unusual birds as penguins. As you can see, there are quite a few types of penguins, and some live in comfortable climatic conditions, and these animals, these birds, build a nest from stones. Here we see this about 21 species of these birds, but most and some penguins live extremely cold areas. The penguins that how the emperor penguin lives in the very cold climate. and the female lays only one egg, and her body is greatly depleted and exhausted. She lives to feed for 2 months, and the male incubates the egg, but not in the nest at such low temperatures. Without movement, both will freeze. So it keeps the egg in special bag, and if you want to see this bag, here we see on the leg, keeping the leg in this place. And I leave this very interesting video file here with a link to how the emperor penguin laid her egg, and after that how the male emperor's penguin keeps this egg warm until through the 2 months, and move with this egg, and even don't eat all this time. I left a few links to the video. It is very interesting. Here this is little penguin, and it still keep in a leg and all time. And of course not all penguins do this, only which live in a cold place. It's without any fat and can't protect its body in the cold places. Now let's talk about what happens after laying eggs. If you want to know more, here we see natural incubation. Natural incubation, let's look at the examples on domestic chickens. Of course the incubation period for all birds is different, but here this incubation by sitting and brooding hen over eggs is called natural incubation. In this method, broody hens are made to sit over hatching eggs to a longer period without feeding and water due to some hormonal changes. And the full incubation period for an egg for laying to hatching for chickens is almost 20-21 days, and during this time a hen sits on her eggs and maintains and temperature regulated to ensure proper embryonic development. And terms for natural incubation: brooding and broodness, and here is this prolactin hormone control all this process in the brain of and behavior of the animal. And here is a hatching period or incubation period, almost a synonym in the books you can use. And this, let's look at the examples of domestic chickens, of course, the incubation period for animals. And here we can find these days, what happened with the embryo in this period. And here this is what happened with the eggs exactly. It's very quickly development, very quickly. Amazing transformation take place over these few days, and below I give you several links there. You can look at the number of days and the development of embryos, different embryos for some species. For example, here this is the incubation period and how many eggs can be. And here we see some days and broods and fledge, and of course not only this, here we can find more domestication and convert embryos of birds and even embryo development, and one more table for different kinds of birds, few more types. And here you can find all information what organ can transform in what period for, and just this table very huge, so I will leave the links to this article. And here we can find the video. It's very interesting video, about 5 minutes, takes 5 minutes, how to embryo can develop chicken embryo. And one more table for incubation period for some spices. And this let you know it all depends on the type of embryo and newborn, heteroshell, precoshell, and of course temperature and humidity are important, and we will talk about this. Here this is temperature rate and heter temperature, and for some spices, and here this humidity and different spices. And what we see, we'll talk about these parameters later, a little bit later. And here we say, and now I still want to return to parasitism and mimicry. And here this is spices which can just to move eggs in a host nest. You have all this, almost all these birds have name cuckoo. Cuckoo can trick other into carriage for its eggs, and finch has mastered the art of egg mimicry. And this social or brood parasitic behavior is quite widespread in birds, and took about 100 bird species. About 1% of all world's birds use this technique for don't care. It's also evolved in quite a lot of insect species and one fish. And one fish uses this technique and a lot of insects. So what we can to find? We talk about its technique. It's good if the egg differs. Here we see the large size of the eggs, but in XH or color. But sometimes only birds that can see in the ultraviolet spectrum can distinguish a parasite egg. Only if they use this ultraviolet sensitive, which if the sunlight move on the eggs, this bird can see the parasitic egg and just move out this egg. But not all birds can use this, but can use the shape, color, size, sensory cues, use some sensory cues, but not always it is very good. And if you can to do this, and this rest will have to look for other ways or come to terms with fate and the parasites, even for the voice and behavior. If you want to be, it's good if the egg differs, or you use the ultraviolet spectrum, and the rest will have to look for other ways, or just give food for ration, not your baby all the time. And yes, sometimes you have to use a very complex code. Sometimes here we see this babies can even do the same voices, so not only egg mimicry, all nesting mimicry. And you can use a different code. Here we see the different code of nesting with autonomous markers, and feedless by parents, and those with normal ones, and even use a very complex code for protection. Look at how the break of the chicks is parented, and will be difficult to take it. And here I even use the QR code. Here you see this model of the mouse. I specifically added a link to the video, this video here, in the form of QR code. It is the same, like a QR code, and a bird parents understand that it is my code. I give you food, but if you don't have this, you just don't have the food. And of course, all mimicry, it's not enough. You can just, in this case, the fake will be easy to identify. but only if there is someone to compare with. Many parasitic chicks just have a short incubation period, and having hatched first, they hate it off. Throughout competing eggs, just take it away and leave alone and just eat all food. Of course, just this, even without open eyes. Just take away all eggs or your brothers and sisters, take away and live alone. Stay alone. It's asynchronic hatching. Asynchronic hatching can be normal. It's just normal in normal families, and hatching is then the eggs or clutch calves over a period of a few days, sometimes 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, like in own. And with this hatching strategy, incubation usually starts before the later eggs are laid, and there is a higher rate of mortality with this hatching strategy, of course, and the last chick is usually not expected to survive, and is a more of an insurance policy against the loss of the first babies. And here we see the first babies and last. It's impossible to compare, but it is one family, and may push the vacant last born chicks out of the nest even and leave only 3 or 5, the biggest and strongest. And this way of strategy is the parental contribution of synchronic hatching. Here we can find, and I leave this link. What can, for instance, in some spices work? Antioxidant and immunoglobulin concentration may decrease across line order in this, and of course here can be more testosterone, like an anabolic hormone, and controls the immune function in babies, and the embryo have role, of course. And here is what are the evolutionary benefits of asynchronic hatching. Here we can find some theories about this, but I want to talk about this a little bit later, because it's just energy for load. And here we can find one more. Synchronic hatching is when the eggs in the clutch are born within a few hours, in 1 day or 2 days, not more. And this strategy, incubation does not usually start until all the eggs are laid. So it's just the mamas take less temperature for incubation on start lay eggs, and the end the temperature start more high, and incubation go quickly. And here we see that chronic hatching is important for presocial and supersocial birds, because they can wind off shortly after they are born, and if the parents are still brooding the later eggs, they could easily be the nice dinner for the hawk, so the hunters. So here we see this kind. And what about temperature and this development of different species, social, artificial kinds of birds? And here is the role of temperature. Temperature is very important, of course. And here look at a few slides below. I just here want to show you the very important activity of the temperature for some species, not for birds, for species which we discussed about these species in a previous practical. The temperature of the incubating eggs determines even a sex. You understand that have no sex chromosomes. These animals, like reptiles, don't have sex chromosomes. It depends on the temperature and one more factors. And here we see this low temperature, all males, it's kinds of these animals, all males, females, females. All high temperatures are different, all females, all males, females. And here we see this slides of sex determination, and here we will discuss this now. And here we see the 7x, not always only temperature, it can be sunny or shady side of the nest. We talked about position of the eggs in the nest, and egg position in the nest with a high temperature on the top or on the bottom. And here we can find that just one enzyme which controls this, and if we just take away this enzyme or temperature rate, you know, these enzymes always can work only in some very short area of the temperature. Just if the temperature not enough, enzyme can't work, and it can describe like a temperature sex determination pathways. If you want to know more, you can just read this article. I will leave the link. It's another survival strategy, and it's a plus on top of what we call parthenogenetics. It's very interesting. We can use some animals, some sexes, for do all species more with more individuals. Here we can find this article and read about turtles, all reptiles, and even crocodiles. Here daylights, not only temperature, sometimes it can be, for some primitive species, it can be just daylights, or just can be the food availability for some species. And even, do you remember this Temporal in a fertility? And as you can see on these slides, the aromatase enzyme is involved in the process. This is terminally sensitive pathways, terminal. Under this hypothesis that females producing temperatures and temperature acts on the terminally sensitive pathways, and the threshold of estradiol concentration regulate for female gonad development and reduced. And as usual, I will leave links to some articles. They are especially relevant now with global climate changes. Of course, in the more primitive species, you see the daylight hours, and even on the availability of food, and this kind of I say that it is a champion of fertility, record holder, and not the gender change to females that all can change sex and naturally down this ability, and men of course enter it. This is a long discussion, and this is not our topic today, but I want to remind you about Dolly sheep. It is a clone. This is the first clone, known clone of is female. Of course, it is a clone from somatic genetic material. And look at the number of the attempts after more than 200, almost 300 attempts, and we have this clone, and it gave birth her offspring, and also had her own clone sister. Here we see this clone sister, and here like how it was doing, exactly how it was done. And well, we continue. I just said that all sisters, not men's, all are females, and that's why this the way of parthenogenesis, parthenogenetically, but it's not the same, but it is the way how we can to use reproduction. It's exactly the egg cell donor was a female, of course, and but another view for not only for genetical DNA is the same, but be careful with just a view of the animal. And here we know just exactly today we have a lot of clones, different animals, but it's not so common for science. Next, provision and after hatching. At hatching, some young birds are entirely dependent on the parents, while others are able to leave the nest and being absolutely like an adult. And based on such difference, young birds are generally categorized like atrocial and prosocial, and because of variations, these two broad categories, ornithologists more classify young birds into 6 categories. And here we talked about super social, like megapods. Here this is brush turkey, megapod, and this bird don't have any parental behavior, just lay eggs in this huge compost routine and do not absolutely any care, go away, just here high temperature and send to incubation. Egg chamber can continue their evolution, and after that all little completely independent in hatching, not parental care, absolutely. And here, if you want to know more, and even I leave the link on the video how it can, or just mood builders, it is good book about all kinds of birds which incubate their eggs using the body heat and use the just organic matter. And here we see these kinds of spices, and here we see this. Here is a comparison in the table. We talked about all these animals in a previous practical. I just don't stop on just I take this table. Here we can see all together, and if you want to know more, I leave the links on the very interesting video here about all birds, very interesting but very long, about 50 minutes. I just don't have the time, but usually all artificial young are enabled and can control the body temperature and must be kept warm, and them ambient temperatures are low or cold, and then is in direct sunlight and keep warm the different time, not only 5-7 days, but these animals grow very quickly. And distribution of parental care in some birds, here we see these models of parental care can be biparental, mostly biparental, but sometimes male only or female only. In some cases we can use the cooperation of all birds together from the previous nest, and here we see these models of parental care for incubator. Incidence of major classes of parental care by birds have been drawn from classical studies that presented both the publication of the massive secondary lecture and the revolution driven by molecular approach to avian phylogenetic. And here we see this biparental care by pair, bonder male and female is the most common parent of care, but almost 81% species can use this. When the parent arrives at the nest, and here this is young typically respond very quickly, and it can show how hungry they are by bidding, and being calls with mouth wide open, and in many species young have brightly colored, as you know, mouths, and to help parents direct the food into the right mouth. And feeding rates typically increase with the increasing age of nestings, of course. And here we can find how many times big birds can feed their babies like twice a day, but very often it takes almost 100 times a day, and we can find this information in the next slides if you want to know more. We have already talked about cooperation, why the chicks or previous generation stay and help care for the next. Of course, here we can find this information about cooperative breeding. Adult individuals, in addition to the genetic parents, regularly aid and the rating of young, or just protect, but all very often for feeding, just feeding. And here we can find the information. Just I leave the links on this these books, very interesting about feeding of youngs. First of all, it helps to feed offspring, of course. I just leave some links. In feedings, the visit to nest are typically quick. Less time at the nest means less activity than might attract the attention of predators, and however, particularly early in the nesting period, females may remain in the nest after feeding. Nest lights to brood the young. After feeding nest lights, adults often pick up fecal sacs, which are just surrounded by the gelatinous membranes. And here this is this photo. Fecal sac below that may be eaten, particularly when nest lights are very young, or carried from the nest for disposal. Older nesting may shoot the feces away from the nest, like this bald eagle. This certainly makes it much easier to take care of course, but finding takes longer. And here we can find the find and found. I leave the links as usual. As you can see, even anatomy adapted to this certain way. These bells tell how a bird feeds, and here we see this puts a very long bill with a large throat and used to scoop up fish. And these models all, and here we can find this describing this a huge table too, but just I use for show you. But if you want to know, just move on these links, and you can find more information about how long these birds feed the nest, how food it use, and how long it happen. And here we see this. If you want to help the baby birds, as you know, in the springtime sometimes you can find the baby birds, but it's very difficult. At first you just should to be sure that it's not normal, and look for the nest. If you don't find it, or just parents, and feed a baby bird. You can use some birds that you can to use bread or something else. And if you want to know more how to care about this baby bird, you just can use this link. But leaving the nest Most birds nest only once a year, but some species like the American robin can have up to 5 nests during a single breeding season. And of course it's very hard work for first year, especially for first year breeding for birds. And for birds that do take it to adulthood, however, they also survive in another year and improve greatly. And how many links we have for today, I will leave all this, but today we don't have any homework, so it's just to look through these video files, and see you next time for parental care in mammals. Bye bye.